Welcome to Get on the Ark. My name is Darren Conrad. I'm your host. For those of you who don't know who we are, this is a show about what God is doing He's doing extraordinary things and miracles with ordinary people all across the globe. There's a storm coming, a spiritual storm with dark days ahead for all of humanity. And just as God warned Noah to build an ark to save his family from the coming flood, all across the world, God is calling his people out of the darkness and out of complacency and into a relationship with Jesus to save us from the storm that's coming to our generation. So welcome to Get on the Ark. It is an honor and a pleasure to have Pastor Arthur Pawlowski from Canada. And we're just reconnected at the Reawaken reunion. And let me just say, it was such a blessing to hear you speak and to see you honor General Flynn and Clay Clark with the medallions from Canada. That was awesome. But welcome, Pastor Arthur. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back on your show. Yeah, I'm telling you, I entered that room and immediately was like a family reunion. My heart leaped with joy and so many happy faces and people coming. And truly, when you talk to the people, when you see the people, they come to you, you can tell they want to bless you, they want to cheer you on, and it's truly a family. It was fascinating to be again among such a heroes of faith. And every story, every person that was talking from the stage, and even the people in the crowd around that were coming, everyone is a hero. Everyone has an unbelievable testimony. And the common theme was enemy fought hard. Enemy tried to crush every one of them. And but God stepped in, faith, and they kept plowing. They didn't quit. And I think that's the key. And I think that's the most important message for us today. Just don't quit. If you don't quit, and if you are on the side of God, the side of truth and righteousness, it's impossible for you to lose. You already know that the victory is yours. You have already won because Jesus won that victory on the cross. So the rest is just a formality. You just have to keep plowing and keep showing up. And that was the common theme. All of those people that were talking from the stage, enemy came, tried to crush them, but they stood strong, gave glory to God. And of course, they were surrounded by like-minded individuals. And I think that's another lesson we have to keep reminding ourselves, keep learning, keep sharing that, one man cannot do it, one family cannot do it, one church cannot do it. But when we come together, we would be unstoppable, unmovable, unshakable. And I think that's what I take from those meetings in the States, from the Reawaken America tour. When we come together, we are united, we are strong, and we just keep plowing. It's like, it's like you got a horse and you've got one plow, or you got a combine, right? And we were in Tulsa as a combine. I mean, it was a big harvester. That's exactly what was going on. I've heard that there was hundreds of thousands of people that were watching this live, and people were impacted and blessed and healed. And just like you said at the very beginning, yes, the storm is brewing, but I think that God wants to keep his faithful, his remnant, his children in the eye of the storm. So everything around is spinning, everything is getting crazy, and it's darkness, and it's raining, and the lightning, and things are flying around you, and yet you're in the middle of God's perfect will. You're in the eye of the storm, and you look up, and it's this beautiful blue skies and the sun shining. And quite often I tell the people, when I was younger, of course, like 200 years ago, when I was still in the business, I had some money, and we did very well at that time. And I was taking some visitors, pastors, and preachers flying. And every single time you go and you take the plane, and there can be clouds everywhere. You just keep going up and just keep going up, and eventually, on the other side of the storm, on the other side of those clouds, is this beautiful, incredible sun shining. That's God. God is shining on all of us all the time. Sometimes we just don't see it, like that sun. We know it's there, but we cannot see it. We cannot enjoy the light coming from the sun. But God is reminding us, and that's what I would take from that, couple days in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that we have friends, we have people that wish us well, people that want to bless us, not curse us. That God is on our side; He's always shining. We just have to keep plowing.
Yes. And something else I noticed, there was 25 Reawaken tours, and this was the reunion, so the 26th one, and I watched the evolution of what God did with those speakers and those people throughout these years of doing these tours, because the reunion, every single speaker put Jesus on a pedestal and it highlighted God, and it was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like it was prominent. Like it hadn't, certainly God's been at all these events, but this was like, it's like every heart has been filled with him.
Yeah, because after all those years of fighting in the trenches and being shot at and gossiped about and hated and attacked and all those different things you go through, you finally realize, even if you were not fully on the other side of the fence, if you will, let's say you were riding the fence, and most Christians, in quote, they are riding the fence. But when you go through craziness like we all went through, you realize, without God, we are done. We're finished. Country is done. Country is finished. We cannot salvage this. We're done without God. But then, if God will step in, in the Bible it says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And of course, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is healing, there's prosperity, there is, peace, joy, all those different things that we are missing when we are in the middle of the battlefield. And I think that's what all of those people experienced through the years, and all of them realized, I'm done unless God steps in, unless God comes to the rescue. And that's my story, that's your story, that's General Flynn. I mean, he's a walking testimony. That's Clay Clark, Amanda Grace, you name it. All of those people that were speaking give God the glory, because all of us, we realize this simple truth, that without God we are finished and we have already lost, but with God we have already won. The enemy just doesn't know it yet.
Well, can you share a little about your story? It's kind of interesting. You leave communist Eastern Europe to safe, free Canada. Can you share a little about that story, and then of course what happened?
Yeah, I grew up behind the Iron Curtain, under the boots of the communism and socialism. And also, I think it's very important for the people to understand, I grew up in Poland. Why is that important? Because Poland was always the epicenter of craziness in Europe. Poland has been always attacked by neighbors. Polish people constantly. The history of the Polish people is a history of resistance and fighting for our liberties and freedoms, for our families, for our land. And of course, the story of the Nazi Germany. It was Poland, the first country that was attacked by Adolf Hitler in 1939, that started the Second World War. And then, of course, I grew up hearing the stories from my grandparents, from the older generation, about what happened to the Polish people. With school, I visited Auschwitz-Birkenau many times. And of course, then as an adult, I would, quite often take Americans and Canadians, my family, of course, many times, back to Auschwitz-Birkenau to remind ourselves what happens when you don't put a check in people's authority. So if there is no accountability, like we see right now, when there are no checks and balances, this leads to concentration camps. This leads to gulags. My grandfather escaped Siberia. It took him 2 years to come back to his home. My own grandma, and I heard the stories, of course, when I was growing up. I spent vacations and summers with my grandparents. I would hear the stories. She was arrested by the Soviets during the World War II, and because we were attacked by two sides, with my great great uncle, and he was a soldier, a professional soldier, so he managed to lower my grandma, so my father's mom, on a rope, and they escaped from Soviets back to Poland. You hear the stories of atrocities and genocides being done by the Russians and done by the Germans, and and then I was born in the 70s, and I grew up through this craziness of communism and socialism in Poland, but also I grew up in a very peculiar time of the Solidarity movement. What is Solidarity movement? For those that do not remember, Lech Wałęsa and the movement, the biggest civil rights movement in Poland, where millions of Poles took it to the streets, and they did it peacefully, no guns, no swords, and they did it in a very interesting, interesting way. They did it by taking it to the streets, dragging this massive cross. They would take the massive cross and they would place it in front of machine guns, soldiers, and tanks, and all of the people would go to their knees. And I'll never forget that when they were, imagine tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people all across Poland, millions on their knees chanting, "We want God, we want God, we want God." Because you got to remember, God was forbidden. According to the communists, God does not exist. God is Joseph Stalin. When I was growing up, we were always told Diedushka Stalin, the greatest savior. So Grandpa Stalin, the greatest savior of all humanity. They were teaching us as kids, 6, 7 years old, that there was no greater human being that was ever born than Joseph Stalin. Of course, later on, we learned that he was the most bloodied mass murderer of all times. But that's propaganda. So when the propaganda shows up, people like me, and especially you, Americans, Canadians, the Westerners, you should pay attention to people like us, because when propaganda shows up, when the tyranny police state shows up, we can smell it and we can see it miles from far. And I grew up in that kind of environment. When you watch TV, it was propaganda 24 hours, 7 days a week, propaganda in school, propaganda in so-called justice system, propaganda in your workplace, you name it. Everywhere you turn, you are hammered, just like during the COVID era, with lies on top of lies, on top of lies, on top of lies. And later on, many people, even the liars, didn't know what's really is the truth. I mean, you can keep lying so many times, you completely yourself, you're lost. You have no idea what's going on. It was kind of fascinating to watch that. Of course, people need to understand communism and socialism is only cured for the rich Americans and kids, the spoiled brats, those kids that have everything their hearts desire. They sip Starbucks coffee for $7 and life is good, and they kind of idolize communism and socialism because they go vacationing in Cuba with all their American dollars, and they think, wow, everything is so cheap and it's amazing, and it looks like people are smiling. Of course they're smiling to the tourists, because you are the means for their next day, for the survival. But you have to understand, communism and socialism is like a locust. It will eat everything, and it does eat everything. There is nothing left. I grew up in a country where you would go to a store. So now imagine for a second, just imagine you going to a Costco, and your brain right now is wired in such a way that if you would close your eyes and imagine Costco or Walmart or Superstore, whatever, you see tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands items. When I would say to you chocolate, you can close your eyes and see 50 different chocolates, at least different brands. If I would tell you, sodas, that's like you got 50 to choose from. Coffees, you've got 50 to choose from. But now imagine Costco of my childhood. You go to a store and there is nothing, empty shelves. The only thing you can buy is vinegar, because that was the only thing that the Russians were not stealing from the Polish people. That's it. The only way you could buy something was in a black market or under the table, of course, twice, three times, four times more expensive. I remember growing up where mom was sending me to buy a loaf of bread, and you could buy only one loaf of bread, and you had to stand in a lineup that you could not see the end of it. Imagine a life like this, and then tell me, yeah, communism and socialism is awesome, but you already have communism and socialism in New York. New York right now is being taken over by communism and socialism, and there's so many people that are cheering for it. They can't wait for this to be fully implemented. And I and others like me look at this and like, you people are insane.
Hmm.
When people ask me how it was growing up under communism behind the Iron Curtain, one word, and I keep saying this over and over again because it looks like people are not getting it. It's hell. You have to understand ism, whatever the ism is, communism, socialism, feminism, fascism, all the isms are from the pit of hell. When they take over, you will live and your children in hell. Imagine a kid that is growing up that has never seen a banana except on a picture. I mean, how can you comprehend a story like this? I remember my brother David, he's 5 years younger than me. My mom, I don't know how she got a hold of 3 bananas. I mean, think about it, 3 bananas. And she gave, she ate one, she gave one to me, and she gave one to David, my younger brother. And then suddenly, my brother disappears. We cannot find him. Where is David? So my mom runs around. She's trying to look everywhere and outside the doors. What happened to David? Well, eventually we found him. He was hiding behind the door trying to eat the peel from the banana because he has never seen a banana before and it tasted so good. He just was eating the green part of the banana. I'll tell you another story just to give you a perspective of what I'm trying to tell the people. My mom, she was an amazing person. She always looked to give us some normality in this hellish environment. So once a year, sometimes twice a year, if she was extremely blessed and she was able to give bribery here and there, she would buy us a chocolate. And if it happened that the chocolate had peanuts in it, I would break those little bars. Chocolate is that big and has those little bars. I would break that little bar and I would lick the chocolate around the peanut and I would save the peanut, that little tiny peanut, for the next day.
Wow.
That's hell.
Yeah.
That's hell. You couldn't just go and buy boots. You think you go to a store, you buy whatever you need. No, you couldn't do that under communism. You couldn't just go and buy a TV. Our TV was from Russia because, of course, everything was the best from Russia and everything was from the pit of hell if it was from from the West. So we could not buy a TV from outside of the Iron Curtain. We could only buy the Russian TV. So my parents bought the Russian TV and it blew up 3 times. I mean, caught on fire 3 times because it was faulty. And you couldn't just go and buy a new one. You couldn't, you had to fix it. Everything, you had to go and fix it. Imagine a situation where you buy a car. Now think about it. Let this sink in. You buy a car for, let's say, $10,000. And the moment you drive out of the manufacturer, it's worth $20,000. And then if you keep it for 10 years, you can still sell it for $15,000, $5,000 more than you bought it 20 years before, because there was nothing to buy. You had to either bribe a government, you had to be government to be able to buy those different things. Total insanity, hell on earth. So I grew up in that kind of environment when a man could be tortured, and torture was normal. it was nothing unusual when you saw police officers beating people, breaking their legs and their arms. It was just part of communism and socialism, police state.
Wow.
So we were subjected as kids to those show trials. And the show trial is a trial when accused has already been found guilty, and everything has been already done, but then you still have to go through the process for the publicity, entertainment, publicity, and to scare other people. It was called the show trial. When the verdict was already pronounced, they would just take you through the ringer. And when a person would be brought on a stretcher, so there is a trial, here is a political dissident, whatever, they are bringing this man on a stretcher, broken legs, broken arms, a black face, no teeth, no fingernails. And the judge had to ask, because we had a constitution at the time, and this should be a warning to the American people, because American people think that they are protected by their constitution and the Declaration of Independence and your amendments. Listen, tyrants do not care about your piece of paper. Germany had a constitution, didn't care. Nazis didn't care about their rights, the human rights, international laws. Poland had a constitution. Actually, believe it or not, Poland was the second country on earth right after, literally few years after the United States of America, that implemented constitution. We elected kings. Think about it. Polish people believe in freedom so much that we used our constitution to elect kings, which was unheard of at that time in Europe. So, our rights, constitution, we value a lot. But when the Soviets took over, when you were celebrating the freedom in 1945, Polish people were taken by force by the Soviets, by the Red Army, and the tyrants did not care about human rights, international laws, or the Constitution. So the judge had to ask the accused, not guilty yet, just accused. So the concept of innocent until proven guilty does not exist in a totalitarian regime. And that's what we see right now. You've got your January 6 people. We had our truckers, of course, pastors. You're guilty. It doesn't matter if you're innocent or not. You're already guilty. You got to remember, I was convicted of terrorism for giving a sermon to the truckers when I said 3 times during my 19-minute speech, peaceful, no guns, no swords. And I was charged with terrorism for simply telling people to stand for God and state given rights. That was what I did. And I was charged with terrorism, and I was convicted. I was found guilty on terrorism because I was a political dissident and they needed to make an example. And that's how I saw growing up. So you've got the accused. The judge is asking him, what happened to you? He can't talk. He's so severely tortured and beaten, he cannot talk. So the lawyer says, oh, he fell. He was coming from his cell, and he fell. And he broke his legs and his arm, and no teeth and no fingernails, because he fell. And that was normal. That was normal. And then 80s came, and the Poles took it to the streets. Solidarity movement grew. And then eventually Iron Curtain was broken, Berlin Wall has fallen, and thanks to Americans, actually. Reagan, of course, the famous speech, Mr. Gorbachev turned down this wall. Well, you were on this side of the wall. Me and my wife, we were on the other side of the wall. And eventually in 1989, the Berlin Wall fall, Europe was liberated, and now Poland is the freest country in Europe, believe it or not. We have no problems with terrorism. Polish economy is the best in Europe. Poland actually is buying more gold than all other nations in European Union, which is remarkable. So I grew up under Catholicism. I didn't know any better. In Poland at that time, you're born, they would stamp you right away. You're born in Poland, Catholic. Next, Catholic. They just stamped you. That's it. So I grew up in that kind of environment. I didn't know pretty much about anything else. That truth was not allowed. So you would go to church, Catholic church, because it was controlled by communism, just like in China. and that's how I grew up. But I knew always that God was knocking on my heart. I deep inside I knew there is God, and I wanted to serve Him. But the only way to serve God in Catholicism is to become a priest. So this is a story that not many people know, but I actually end up in a monastery as a kid, and I wanted to become a Catholic priest. My wife, which is a funny part of the story, she wanted to become a nun. So somewhere there in Poland, both of us were drawn to God. We just didn't know any better. We didn't know anything. And during that time, no priest was encouraging you to read the Bible. So we didn't. No one was really encouraging anyone to read the Bible. You were expected to show up once a week, listen to 20-minute sermon from a priest, and that's pretty much it. So I ended up in a monastery, and what I saw over there actually turned me away from God. I saw corruption, I saw drinking, party, girls, you name it. And I remember, I'll never forget this moment. Those are the moments that change your future, your life. I look into the mirror and I said to myself, do I want to spend my entire life as a hypocrite? Because I knew I'm going to be drinking. I knew I'm going to have women. I knew I'm going to be dealing with money. I knew I'm not going to, live a pure life. I knew that. Deep inside, I knew I want to have a wife and children. So I decided, no, I don't want to spend the rest of my life being schizophrenic. Like most Christians today, they are holy on Sunday. They have this cup of holiness on Sunday, and they are the devils on Monday. I didn't want to do that. My God is not a schizophrenic God, and He tells you and me that we have to choose either life or death. But because of the corruption, because of what I saw within the Catholic Church, it turned me so off away from God that I went to business. And then right from monastery, I became a smuggler. I started to smuggle things from, the other side of the Iron Curtain. So what did I smuggle? And, for those people that do not know the system, it's not like mafia. It's not like, yeah, they were mafiosos there, of course. There's always organized crime. But kids like me, we were just, okay, tomatoes. There are no tomatoes. So we would bring tomatoes. There are no alarm clocks. In a country, you couldn't buy alarm clocks. So we smuggled it from Russia. Gold smuggled from Russia. TVs smuggled from Germany. Electronics smuggled from Austria. Alcohol smuggled from Yugoslavia through Hungary. Chocolates, you couldn't buy chocolates. So we would go to Berlin. We would go to Czechoslovakia and bring chocolates to Poland. So that's what I was doing, and I was very good at it. Actually, I was making a fortune. I would triple my money. I would double my money within 3 days. So usually within 3 days, I will have double and double and double. I was very good at what I was doing. And of course, you had to bribe the police. You had to bribe the border cops. You had to bribe pretty much everyone all the time. The bribery was normal. Communism and socialism, every totalitarian regime runs on bribery. And if you don't believe me, go to Cuba, go to Mexico, go to African countries, which I do. I work in Africa. We started orphanages and medical clinics and churches in Africa. Everything runs by bribery. I don't bribe people, but I know how the system works because, when you work over there, you see it, you hear it all the time. Nothing can be moved without, giving an envelope of cash or some incentives to the authorities, to the politicians, to the police. And that's just how it is. A totalitarian regime doesn't take hostages. Either you're in or you're shot. You will be completely destroyed. So I grew up in that kind of environment. When I saw the corruption in the Catholic Church, I vowed never to enter a church again. I associated the deeds, the things that the Catholic priests were doing, with a holy God. And that was my mistake. I thought that those are his representatives, and because they're crooks, they're liars, they're cheaters, they're hypocrites, then I don't want to serve a God that has representatives like that. And that was my big mistake, and I paid dearly. Or actually, I should say my wife paid dearly for my mistake, associating the deeds of men, corrupt men, with a holy God. So eventually, my father escapes, and then we tried to escape 3 times from Poland, and we did not succeed. They denied our visas. We couldn't leave the country. And eventually, my mom sold everything my parents worked for, furniture, you name it, everything they had and worked all their lives, they sold. And my mom bought 3 tickets on this fancy boat. 3 tickets, one for her, one for me, and one for my brother David. And that's how we escaped Poland, with nothing, with the clothes that we had on. And even the little clothes we had to drop it, on the other side of the fence illegally, in Athens, in Piraeus, when our father came to pick us up. And the next, I think 2 days later, I got a shovel and I was told, that's it. My school career is over, and now I'm a construction worker. To survive, I mean, we had nothing. Our first TV was from garbage bin. Our first utensils, bed, everything was from garbage bin. So I know poverty. I've tasted poverty, and then later in my life, I tasted the riches too, because I worked. I decided if I am to build houses, at least I will learn the trade, and I will become the best builder that there is in the region. And that's exactly what happened. Very quickly, within a few years, I learned the trade. I hired professionals, and I had about 100 people working for me. I did very, very well. I made tons of money, and I worked for literally the richest and the most famous people on earth, billionaires, singers, chief of police, you name it, politicians. I worked for them. And again, it was by bribery, because we had to hire illegal immigrants. So we were building in national parks. So the team continued. And then I met my wife. My wife was born again, fired up believer. And she was telling me about this living God. And I said, I don't want to have anything to do with organized crime. Actually, I said to her, I prefer to work for mafia than go to church. That's what I said to her. I find this cute and funny right now, because I vowed never to enter a church again in my life. And I'm a pastor. I mean, That's what I do. I preach all the time. I travel and I preach Jesus everywhere. But I did it because what I saw, and what I saw was not good. So again, I associated the evil of people with the holy God. I hated that evil. I hated that corruption. But my wife, thank Jesus for godly wives. Thank Jesus for fiery mothers and sisters. In my life, I have never seen nothing more powerful than a mother or a wife, a woman that is fighting for someone that she loves, like a mama bear. And that's what my wife decided to do. She decided to fight for me. And of course, it's a story that usually takes me 3 hours, just that story to tell. Eventually, we got married, and she went through 7 years of hell. 7 years of hell. When I describe that time, and even right now, think of me like a donkey that has all the donkeys in that one donkey. I think I'm one of the most stubborn humans that ever lived. God says about Abraham, he was the humblest man, the most humble man that ever lived. I think about me, God would say he is the most stubborn man that ever lived. That's just me. In everything I do, it's so crazy difficult to shift me, away from it. Very difficult. Only God can put that bridle, that leash, if you will, in a good way on me. And of course, he uses my wife. So I remember one time, many, many years ago, elder in a church that we were attending, he looked at me and he said publicly, he said, Art, nothing good will ever come out of you. You're a lost cause. Nothing good will ever come out of you. And I remember I did my best, but my best was not good enough to him and other people, but I tried. I tried to be a better man. I was a businessman. I was making tons of money, but I was a horrible human being. I was a drunkard. I was not a good guy, but I tried in my, sick nature, if you will. I've tried to be a better man. And I already attended church, and I read the Bible, and I tried my best, but I was still not there yet. And I remember I came to God and I said, God, I get it. I am not perfect, and I'm doing my best to change my life. But I read in the Bible. At that time, I read the Bible a few times already. And I said, I read in the Bible, in your word, that you use the donkey. And I think that I'm a little bit higher, maybe not much higher than that donkey, but I think I'm a little bit higher in your eyes than that dirty animal, the donkey. If you use the dirty animal, I'm willing to be your donkey. And I'm giving you my word that if you will choose to use me, I will always say to the people what you're putting on my heart, even if it means they will all leave me. I said that to God like 30 years ago. I said, God, I'm willing to be your donkey, and I'm giving you my word. I'll always tell the people what I believe you're putting on my heart. It was so funny because we had a guest speaker from Poland, didn't know me, didn't know anything about me, didn't know my name. And during that time, I was always hiding behind somebody else's shoulders. Those people that come to church, they always sit in the back. Well, that's me. I was always in the back hiding. I didn't want to be seen. I came for my wife, and God was dealing with me, and it was going very slow. So I was hiding. But this guy stops in the middle of the sermon in a church, and he kind of looks for me, and I'm trying to hide, but I couldn't. And he points a finger and says, you. And I'm telling you, what happened after was crazy. He says, come. So I felt a little bit embarrassed. I didn't want to go, but I'm a civilized person. So I started to walk towards him, and he said, you are my donkey, and I will use you, and I will ride on you like on that donkey to Jerusalem. And when I'm done with you, you will obey me. You will listen. It was so funny because God heard my prayer. He heard my prayer, and yes, he didn't crush my spirit. He didn't take my character. So I'm stubborn. I'm still a stubborn man. However, I'm like this wild horse that has the bridle on, and God can control him, and God can lead him left and right. So after that experience, everything changed. Of course, 2000 came, and our oldest son was born. And I don't know if you know the story. Our oldest son was born dead, and he had a heart on opposite side, smashed lung. Actually, he didn't have a lung. And the doctors, some by the miracle of God, revived him back to life. But they said he's not going to survive. Even if he lives another night, he's going to be a vegetable for the rest of his life. And they asked us to unplug him. But my wife fought, and she said, absolutely not. And it's a very long story. Like I said, it takes me 3 hours to tell my testimony. You can watch it on YouTube. It's free. Someone did a documentary on that story. It's called Street Advocate. Street Advocate. It's a documentary on what happened to our son, why I do what I do, why am I so determined in believing that God is, there's nothing impossible for God, because he raised our boy. Within few hours after a miracle happened, they opened him up. They find out he has no lung. There is no hope. He's not going to live. And then within few hours, when we prayed, the heart moved to its natural place, and the lung that was not there appeared out of nowhere. We were invited to come to talk to doctors, and they did a symposium on this case, and they said that there's no medical explanation to what happened. And they said to us, it looks like your God heard your prayers, and they called our son a star baby, a miracle baby. And they said, your son, this baby, should not be alive, but is alive, should not be able to breathe, but is breathing on his own. It's like a star baby. It's like a baby that came from the stars, and we cannot explain it. I have three, still in my office, I have 3 books, massive books from hospital about this case. When I read the surgeon's report, it was fascinating read, because it says, I opened his chest and I could not find even a trace of a lung. And then a few hours later, boom, there is a fully grown lung that they cannot explain. And the funny thing about this is that the lung just didn't appear fully grown. It was growing 1 hour at a time. So they did about 7 x-rays in a documentary, Street Advocate. And also there's another one, shorter version for those that don't want to watch 1 hour documentary. It's called The Father's Vision. The Father's Vision. It's also free on YouTube, and you can watch it. And you can see the x-rays right there, and you can see the surgeon's report on the case. It's fascinating. Anyway, our son was completely raised from the dead, and he's 26 years old. He is finishing his law degree. I was called by the mainstream media here in Calgary because I used to advocate for the poor on radio, on TV, newspapers for years. So they called me Street Advocate. That's why you got the name of the documentary, because the movie director came and says, who is this Street Advocate? So they did a documentary about the street advocate that was fighting for the rights of the poor. Well, God is such a fascinating, amazing, merciful God. I was not able to finish my school. I studied 3 years of law. I couldn't finish. So I became a street advocate, but my son, our oldest son, the miracle baby, the star baby, is finishing his law degree in Virginia, Liberty University. He's already working for a California liberty law firm fighting for the liberty of Americans. So, which is, fascinating turnaround of events. Anyway, fast forward, eventually we walked away from business and we started to work with the homeless people. And that's what we do to this day. So my first trouble with the law was in 2005 when we took about 600 people off the streets. I still had money. I had properties. My business was really, really doing good in Canada. And we started to sell property and houses, and we were saving lives. Literally, we took hundreds of people off the streets, found them jobs, fed them, and that's where I ended up in the trouble. When we were just a little ministry, no one cared. When we started to make a very heavy impact in the neighborhoods, the government stepped in, bylaws, police. I was told that we're interfering with the drug business. By taking hundreds of people off the streets, someone was losing millions of dollars in profit, and they took notice. Government got involved, mayor got involved, mainstream media. I started to get tickets. And then 2006 was my first arrest for publicly reading Bible in a park. And then since then, I think I have become the most persecuted Canadian in the history of this country. I received over 360 citations, over 120 court cases, multiple arrests, of course, imprisonment. And my brother David was arrested with me just because he's my brother, 13 times. And our oldest son, to this day, every time he crosses the border, he gets detained because he dared to testify during COVID era before the European Parliament about how Canadians' so-called justice system is treating a clergy in Canada. Well, for that, he gets arrested every single time he crosses the border. Technically, he's detained. So no handcuffs, no, processing. He's detained. He gets a paper and he's let go, right? Just to annoy me. During the COVID, I was arrested multiple times for a refusal to stop the soup kitchen. So our ministry, streetchurch.ca, our ministry feeds thousands of people on the streets of Calgary. And we have been doing this since 99. So that's 27 years. When I was still in business, we started to do that. And 2005, I walked away from business and I'm doing this 21 years full time. So when whatever happened, whatever you want to call it, happened in 2020, authorities came to me and they said, you have to stop feeding the people. We got to shut down your soup kitchen. We are shutting down shelters. We are shutting down soup kitchens because we are in this crisis. And I said, people, you absolutely do not make any sense. If we're truly in the middle of this crisis, my services now are more needed than ever. What do you think is going to happen to 15 to 20,000 individuals facing homelessness if you're going to shut down shelters, if you're going to stop soup kitchens? People need to eat. Pandemia or no, people need to eat. So if you don't feed them, if I don't feed them, they're going to turn to violence. They will break into houses. They will break into grocery stores, garage, cars. They will turn to violence. So I appealed that decision of shutting down. They removed my permit. I appealed it to the mayor. I appealed it to the premier. Premier is like, because we have provinces, so we have premiers, you've got governors in the states. I appealed it to our governor and to his ministers, and no one cared. No one replied to me. So I kept feeding the poor, and of course, the rest is history. Police officers showed up, health inspectors, bylaw services, and I became the first Canadian to get a COVID ticket. So I got the first ticket with another woman from Lethbridge. Two of us, we got a COVID ticket, first in Canada. They did a big story, chief of police, press conferences. It was a big gong show. And I was told if I will keep feeding people, I'll be arrested. And I will get millions of dollars worth of tickets. In Canada, the first one was 1,200. I think the next one was 70,000, something like this, 150 million, million and a half. And, so I got about 50 of them worth tens of millions of dollars worth of tickets because I refused to stop feeding the people. And that was 2020. And then 2020, December, we just had Halloween, and the government, said to the kids, of course, we don't celebrate Halloween. I'm just telling you what the government said. Kids, have a great, Halloween, be safe out there. And then a few weeks later, the same government said, oh, we have to regret, but we're canceling Christmas. And I just, wow. The Canadian government outlawed singing. They outlawed Christmas. You couldn't go and have a coffee with your brother. You couldn't visit your parents, your grandparents. They outlawed Lord's Supper and a gathering. So what I did, I went on television too, and I said, who do you think you are? You think you're green Grinches? You can't cancel God. You can't cancel Christmas. Who do you think you are? You're uncircumcised Philistines.
Yeah.
So I invited people to the biggest Christmas celebration in the land, and thousands of people showed up. And I think we broke some kind of a record. We had 120 cops on, 120 uniformed cops, anti-terrorists, SWAT team, 20 cops on bicycles, chief of police, 54 police vehicles at our church service. And I end up with 15 worth millions of dollars worth of tickets for that event. Then 2021 shows up. They stormed our church after a year of constantly harassing us. Every church service, so think about it, every time we would meet, we had police officers, bylaw services, health inspectors harassing us. And a year later, they stormed our church during the holiest time of the year, Passover celebration, Easter weekend. They came, and I had nothing else to tell them. I told them, get out, you Nazis, you Gestapo, which means political police, you psychopaths. And I kicked them out, and they left. And of course, as you know, they came with a vengeance. They found crooked judges like David Gates and Gordon, that was John Rook, the crook, I call him, John Rook, the crook, the Associate Chief Justice. And they gave them the power to enter our church. And I got arrested with my brother David for the contempt of court. Spent 3 days, 2 nights on concrete, no sleep, charged with insanity, officiating in illegal gathering, participating in illegal gathering, inciting people, so inviting people to come to an illegal gathering. At that time, we faced 6 months of imprisonment. We kept doing the same thing. We never stopped. Then ultimately, I got arrested for baptizing my daughter in a public park in a river outside, charged criminally for the same offenses, officiating illegal gathering, participating and organizing. And I was charged criminally for not wearing a muzzle. Arrested stepping out of the plane after my American tour, spent 4 months sharing my story in the United States, arrested, charged criminally, charged again, arrested again, released, arrested, on bail. And that was pretty much 2021. And then the track convoy came. During that time, I was very active. I organized rallies and church services in capital Ottawa, at the courthouses, Supreme Court, church services, rallies, protests, marches, you name it. I was flying all over the place. I was very active. Actually, I would preach in the church, and literally, I would not even be able to say hi and bye to the people. I would run to another rally. We started with 6 people, 7 people. By the time I was arrested and charged with terrorism, we had 20,000 people every week coming to our services. It was great. It was amazing. The pressure was real. When the government outlawed singing, I told our worshipers that now we're going to sing us twice as many songs. When they told us our Lord's Supper is illegal, I said every time we meet, and we were meeting at that time 8 times a week, we'll have Lord's Supper. And then, of course, gathering, we never stopped. And I was live streaming everything we were doing, showing the happy faces and singing and sermons, the whole 9 yards. Ultimately, I became involved with the truck convoy when they asked me to be their pastor. I did church services for the truckers, multiple church services. And then I ended up in Coutts at the border. I did another church service, Lord's Supper, singing hymns. And ultimately, I was arrested. Actually, it's kind of funny. I'm flattered by it, quite frankly, that out of all the truckers, I was the first one to be arrested a week before the truckers were arrested. And I didn't have a truck. I didn't have a gear. I was just a pastor sharing my heart peacefully, telling people to remain peacefully. And I was telling them, with God we win, do it solidarity style, Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi style. And for that, I was charged with terrorism. Arrested, interrogated, stripped naked, and put in metal cages. I spent time in metal cages. I spent time in solitary confinement, concrete cells. During that time, before I was arrested, they tried to assassinate me multiple times. They lit our house on fire, our own house, during the night hours with our children sleeping. They lit our house on fire. They lit our church on fire, burned down our church's bus. They broke into our church. They broke into my property, stole our speakers. They stole our equipment, cameras. Then they unscrewed tire in our pickup truck. And I mean, the list is, I can go on and on and on. That's why I wrote the book. In solitary confinement, I wrote the book, Lions Do Not Bow. It's on Amazon.com and Amazon.ca. Why? Because, when we do shows like this, I'll have to talk for days, not hours, for days. People ask me, oh, tell me about your arrest. Which one? You gotta be more specific with Artur Pawlowski, because I was arrested so many times. Arrest for keeping the church's doors open, arrest for reading the Bible, or feeding the poor, or preaching to the truckers, or organizing rally. I mean, there's so many arrests. You gotta be more specific. So what I decided to do, I'm giving you the whole story, the background story, why I yelled at those officers, "Get out, you Nazis!" What happened in the courts, what happened in prison day by day, that the inmates were getting incentives from the guards to assassinate me in jail. They already testified to our lawyers about what the guards were giving them, offering them to hurt me. Of course, the longest ongoing protest in a prison system that my wife, with our children, our church, my brother David organized. So for every day I was inside prison, they organized every day a church service outside with blasting speakers, sermons, preaching, worship, the whole 9 yards. Truckers came, big rig. It was unbelievable. The whole jail was jumping, dancing because of the blasting speakers. We could hear the songs, and inmates were singing and dancing. It was surreal. It was incredible. In the book also there is the story of inmates sending a petition to the director of prison saying, if you don't release him from a solitary, you're going to have a riot. And the next day organized church services, Bible studies for the inmates. I was so popular that every time I was being escorted out, they would bang on the doors yelling, "Free Pastor Art, free Pastor Art, free Pastor Art." They said to the guards, if anything happens to this man, watch your back. And eventually, the story doesn't end here. I was kidnapped by sheriffs without the knowledge of my legal team, without the knowledge of my family, taken in a cage, shackled like an animal, hundreds of miles away to another city. And I was locked up like an animal in a cage in a MAC spot for the most dangerous terrorists in the country. That's how dangerous I was. I was told, and it's in a book. All of those things are in a book, including documents. So here is a document that was given to me in MacSpot, and the document says that I am super dangerous. I'm so dangerous, in fact, that I am dangerous for the facility and for the people, that I have to be housed alone indefinitely, that they can keep me here forever. They took my write-ups, they took my manuscript because I was documenting the story. I was writing the background, what I was observing, what I was seeing. And they stole that from me. And thank God for courageous lawyers, because she fought back and we got the manuscript back. I wrote the book. So this book, it's 500 page, the whole story, but I wrote this book here on request forms. That's why you've got all those different colors, because those are the request forms. You got pink, you've got yellow, you've got blue, you got white. Inmates they were slipping those request forms under my door, and I was not allowed to have a pen because I was super dangerous. So the inmates were giving it to me. You will see, here's my son right here testifying before the European Parliament. Here is the rally after my my release from prison. So many things that happened. I mean, incredible stuff. Here is prison. They did March for Jesus, first ever March for Jesus in prison in the history of the prison system, which is quite fascinating. Here is my brother's arrest in a highway. Here's my arrest outside of the house. Here is where I gave the sermon to the truckers. Here's our ministry, Street Church, feeding the homeless. That's what we still do. We feed thousands of people on the streets of Calgary to this day. Here is a sermon at the Parliament during the lockdowns. Here is me baptizing my daughter. For that, I was criminally charged and arrested. So lots of things. Here's when we got released with my brother David from prison, tortured. Here's my arrest on the highway. I was brutalized. I was tortured by the police. And here's my cell. Someone snap a picture. You can't see it with the camera, but if you get the book, you can see me here. My arrest outside the house again. Truckers that we were involved. So many memories, so many things. Here is that famous Get Out video when they came to the church and they tried to shut it down. So I encourage you to read it. This book was confiscated by the Canadian authorities three times. Three times my lawyers managed to get it back, and my lawyer smuggled the manuscript in her documents, and then we sent it to the American publisher, and the book was published. So just for that alone, I think it's worth your read to find out why Canadian government is so terrified of a Polish immigrant with a funny accent talking about what really happened. Well, because I'm giving you history. I'm giving you facts. I'm giving you who, why, for how much, and all those kind of things. I'm naming the crooked judges and the crooked politicians that did this to us. If I was a king, those people would be charged with treason, because that's exactly what they did. So anyway, fast forward, I was convicted of all the charges, convicted of terrorism, faced 12 and a half years of imprisonment. And then the miracle happened. Obviously, God didn't want me in prison. I spent 2 years in jail and on house arrest, and eventually I was released because of the political pressure, because of my brothers and sisters around the world, and especially in America. People were fighting for my life. And I was released from jail, and then I was released from court. And I'm a free man. I still preach. I've never changed. We never stop feeding the people. We never stop organizing church services, rallies. And actually, we're doing another one. We just had March for Jesus Sunday, Father's Day, and we are doing next Wednesday. So as we speak, we are organizing for Dominion Day, which is, Canada Day, 1st of July. We're organizing Jericho March and get together the courthouse. So we're going to be praying for those crooked judges and the so-called justice system and the political system in Canada. And other than that, I've launched with my brother David the biggest lawsuit in the history of Canada. We're suing Attorney General of Canada. We're suing Calgary Police, Chief of Police. We're suing Alberta Health Services. We are suing prison for keeping me in metal cages and all those horrible torture that they did to me. We're suing, jail and RCMP, that's like your FBI. I was arrested by our FBI multiple times. We're suing them as well, and some other actors within the government. So we're going full swing against those people, and it is truly a fight, David versus Goliath. But when I was locked up, the last thing, the worst thing that they did for them, not just for me, they kept me in solitary confinement, because when you put a man like me in solitary confinement, you're just giving me too much time to think, because there's nothing else to do. So I've decided in my heart that when I'm going to survive this, and when I'm going to be alive, I'm going to go after those crooks, and I'm going to expose them for what they did. Another part of the story for people, I'm sure they don't know, after I was locked up in MaxPod, they kept me in freezing conditions. So it was 28 minus Celsius outside, and they cranked their conditioning. And so I'm sitting over there freezing. I asked for the blanket. Officer came, no. And he says, at least you have fresh air. And he laughed. So they wanted me dead. They wanted me hurt. And I was kept there 23 hours and 30 minutes a day, only 30 minutes outside of those horrible conditions. So I called my wife, took a shower, and I said, I think this is the end of the journey. You're going to hear that I had a heart attack or some kind of a failure. They want me dead. They don't want to give me a blanket. It's freezing condition. I can't sleep. I'm shivering. It's cold. It's Siberia here, and I'm going to die unless a miracle happens. So my wife panicked. She called the lawyers and said, if you don't do something, he's dead. They're going to kill him. So the lawyers send a letter to the judge. The judge learns about what is happening to me. That scares the prison system, the remand system here in Alberta. And you won't believe what happened to me after. I was taken from my solitary confinement in MaxPod, again, for the most dangerous terrorists. I was housed there by myself, 100 cells, no other inmate. I was there by myself, guarded by 3 guards, 3 living guards, and cameras everywhere. And then I was taken to a psych ward, and I spent a week in a psych ward without the evaluation of the doctors, without even the knowledge of Alberta Health Services, completely illegal, Soviet style, dealing with political dissidents. And then the judge stepped in, and they got scared, and eventually I was released into a house arrest. So we're suing them for all of that. The fight is brutal. Imagine David suing Goliath and his brothers. They have unlimited resources. They got crooked judges. They got mainstream media. They got political power. But we got God, and God told us to do it. So the tactic right now is stalling, opposing everything we do. The lawyers showed up, no, no, so we have to fight them. When we fight them, it's another $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. So their tactic is to bankrupt me financially. That's the newest gig. So I'm no longer being arrested. I'm not being hunted down or ticketed. Now the newest gig is, let's finish this man financially. So why am I telling you this? Because truly one man cannot do it. I'm not Donald Trump. And even Donald Trump had problems when they were hammering him with hundreds of millions of dollars. He had to turn to the public. I don't know if you remember. He says, I need your help now. They want to bankrupt me. So even as powerful as he was, he needed support. He needed people. Now think about a little pastor from Calgary, Alberta, that most people don't even know that exists. It's extremely difficult. Every month or so, I have to send another $20,000 in legal bills. And, when I have an opportunity to talk, like today, I always ask people, if that story touches you in any way, if the Get Out video touched you, if you want to still see us in the trenches fighting, please support us if you can. I say quite often that there's a lot of people that drink, Starbucks coffee, $7 per coffee. Well, if all the people that are watching this show would skip one coffee and just send us a little bit, few dollars even, I'm telling you, this fight would be so much easier for us. And I know that in the end of the day, the Bible is very clear. All the silver and gold belong to God, and all the cattle on 1,000 hills. So he's going to provide this way or that way. But sometimes I'm telling you, sometimes it's overwhelming. Sometimes the burden becomes heavy. And it says, like, God, especially when I'm trying to catch up. So I paid my credit cards, and then I'm catching up, and finally a little bit of a breather, boom, another 20,000, 30,000 shows up. It's like, God, give me a break here, just a little bit, So I put it on credit card again, and then it takes me a month or two to catch up again, and boom, another bill. So if it's in your heart to support a fighter, a warrior in the trenches that is willing to fight for you and for your children, and why we're doing it because justice demands retribution. We cannot move on from what they have done to us without justice. The blood of the innocent victims, you know how many Canadians died because of those monsters? Children, elderly, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers perished because of those monsters, those beasts. So we've decided, my brother David, we're going to expose them. Civil litigation, for those that do not know, when you're suing, you have enormous opportunities to move the stones and look what under the stones. It's a lot. It gives you more power than the criminal lawsuits, because civil gives you and opens unbelievable huge doors. So we can dig here, you can look there, you can try to find different angles, different people, and that's what my legal team is doing. We have two legal teams. We got criminal lawyers and we got civil rights lawyers working together to bring justice to the Canadian people, and of course justice to my family. What they have done to us, it's unprecedented. It's unbelievable. I don't think there is another Canadian that received more tickets, more court cases, and more arrests for just simply doing his job than I did.
Wow. Well, if we want to support, how do we support? Where do we go?
It's very simple. streetchurch.ca. streetchurch.ca. And there are all kinds of ways. I know that lots of Americans don't like PayPal. Well, still, PayPal still accepts me. I don't have many choices here. So I'm using what is available to me. Also, there is Stripe, and there also is Buy Me a Coffee. So you can use a QR code, and the QR code will take you to the American side. which is secured transactions, and you can donate that way. Also, you can send us a check, streetchurch.ca. You have an information over there, the physical address. Or if you cannot find it, because I've heard some people had trouble, things didn't work, because enemies fighting. Satan is not stupid. If he can destroy my finances, he ultimately destroys our ability to sue them and to bring the truth and justice back to the Canadian society. So if you have any trouble with what we have there, please send me an email and I will send you a direct link. ART at streetchurch.ca. So ART at streetchurch.ca, and I'll be able to send you a link or a QR code. And you can also buy a book. We've donated this book to the church and to the fight, to the legal fight, and all the proceeds that are coming from the book are going to the fight. And of course, we are still feeding the homeless. We're still operating, and thousands of people are being fed 3 times a week. We never stop. 3 times a week on the streets of Calgary, people are being fed, and 40 other locations. So not just here in Calgary, but we started about 40 churches that do the same thing all over Europe, Africa, and North America.
Wow. Well, Pastor, thank you so much for your story. Thank you for getting on the Ark. Thank you for watching Get on the Ark. And please support the Street Church in Canada. So go to streetchurch.ca or email art at streetchurch.ca. And thank you.
Thank you so much. And remember, I want to end with this. The book is not about, poor me, look what they have done to me, look what the devil did to me. The book is about, look what the mighty things the Lord has done for me. So yeah, you've got the story of craziness, but also you've got the victory. I'm here, I'm talking to you. I was just in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This is a story of victory. This is not a story of defeat. And we will keep winning because the victory has been guaranteed to us. That's why I titled this book, Lions Do Not Bow. And of course, the full quote is, lions do not bow before the hyenas. We eat them for breakfast. Good people do not bow before wicked people. Just like Mordecai refused to bow before the wicked Haman in a book of Esther's, the same way, we are not to bow before the wishes of the enemy. Stick to God, jump from the fence, and keep plowing and keep putting that seed into the ground. And I'm telling you, you will see an enormous, incredible harvest. It's just a matter of time. And quite often I tell the people, we have already won. The enemy just doesn't know it yet. The only thing that can get you out of your guaranteed victory is if you quit. So don't quit. No matter what the enemy is throwing at you, do not quit. Come like me and my family. God, Jesus, help. We need help here. It's a little bit too much. It's overwhelming. I don't know what to do. Please, Jesus, have mercy. Come with your strength and your power. The Bible says, greater is he that is in me than the one that is in them. If God is for us, who can be against us? So have that mindset. Have a mindset not of a victim, but of a victor. We are victors. We are sons and daughters of the Almighty God. We are the sons and daughters of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So, put your head high, keep smiling, keep plowing, keep putting the seed into the ground, and just wait for this unbelievable, amazing harvest. I believe it's coming.
Amen. Thank you again, Arthur.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Until next time.